For the first time in 50 years, the guardrails are gone. On February 5, 2026, the New START Treaty officially expired. For over half a century, agreements between the United States and Russia put real, legally binding limits on the world's two largest nuclear arsenals. These deals, with their on-site inspections and constant data swaps, provided a fragile but vital window into what the other side was doing. They were the rules of the game, designed to prevent the unthinkable by lowering the risk of a catastrophic miscalculation. Now, that last pillar of arms control has crumbled. There are no formal limits. No inspections. No rules. The United States, Russia, and a rapidly growing China are now locked in a silent, three-way arms race where the only real limit is how fast each country can build. But the missiles are only part of the story. The real front line of this new Cold War isn't some far-off battlefield, it's in the microscopic circuits that power your life and the energy that runs our world. It's a war for economic survival that most people don't even see. A conflict fought not with soldiers, but with silicon chips and barrels of oil. And its outcome is going to define the 21st century. To really get the gravity of this moment, you have to understand what we just lost. The New START Treaty wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a system. It capped the number of deployed strategic nuclear warheads for both the US and Russia at 1,550 each and limited the missiles and bombers that could carry them. But its most important job was verification. Imagine a high-stakes poker game where you couldn't see anyone else's chips. That's what the world was like before arms control. Treaties like New START changed that. They allowed for 18 on-site inspections every year, letting each side physically check the other's arsenal. They required data to be exchanged twice a year, a constant flow of information on where strategic weapons were and what they were doing. This transparency was the foundation of stability. It built a baseline of trust, not because the two sides liked each other, but because they could see each other. It cut down on the paranoia that fuels arms races. Without good information, military planners assume the absolute worst. They assume the enemy is building more, faster, and better, and they demand the money to match that imagined threat. The system had been getting weaker for years. Inspections were paused back in 2020 due to COVID and never really started up again. Then, in February 2023, Russia officially suspended its participation, pointing to American support for Ukraine as the reason. But even then, there was a shadow of the old order. Both sides quietly signaled they were still sticking to the treaty's numerical limits. In September 2025, Russian President Vladimir Putin even floated the idea of an informal one-year extension, something the Trump administration called good but never officially followed through on. Now, with the treaty officially dead as of February 5, 2026, even that shadow is gone. We've walked into an era defined by the death of transparency. US officials have noted that both sides have huge reserves of non-deployed warheads. These can now be uploaded onto missiles with zero notification, letting arsenals grow rapidly and in total secrecy. For the Pentagon, the entire strategic math has changed. The 2026 National Defense Strategy is already shifting to reflect this new reality, emphasizing the need to modernize and adapt our nuclear forces in a world without formal limits. Pentagon officials now talk about a new focus on escalation management, a chillingly sterile term for planning how to fight a war that could go nuclear when you have no idea what the other side truly has. This isn't a simple return to the Cold War, it's something way more complex and unpredictable. The old Cold War was a two-player game. Two superpowers, two ideologies. Today, we're in a three-way race. The United States now has to deter two nuclear peers at the same time, Russia and China. Russia, even with its economic problems and the huge cost of the war in Ukraine, keeps modernizing its massive Soviet-era arsenal. But the real game changer is China. For decades, China had a minimum deterrence policy, keeping a relatively small but believable nuclear force. That's over. Projections show China's nuclear arsenal has exploded from around 250 warheads in 2015 to an estimated 600 today, and it could hit 1,000 by 2030. What's driving all this is a classic security dilemma, just supercharged for the 21st century. The US sees Chinese expansion and Russian aggression and feels it can't be tied to old treaties that don't include Beijing. China sees American alliances in Asia and advanced missile defense systems as an encirclement, justifying a bigger arsenal to guarantee its own safety. And Russia sees NATO expansion and American military aid as direct threats, demanding a powerful nuclear backstop. The Trump administration has insisted that any new arms control deal has to be trilateral, it has to include China. But Beijing has repeatedly refused. They argue that their arsenal is still tiny compared to the American and Russian stockpiles, which each number over 5,000 total warheads. Why, they ask, should they agree to limits when they're still just trying to catch up? So here we are. No limits, no transparency, and three major powers modernizing their nuclear forces as fast as they can. The economic costs are staggering. This isn't just about defense budgets. The 9 nuclear-armed states already spend tens of billions of dollars a year on these weapons, with spending approaching $100 billion in 2024 alone. That's money that isn't going to healthcare, education, or infrastructure. It's a massive opportunity cost, a drain on national economies for weapons that can never be used. But the deeper economic cost is uncertainty. Global markets hate uncertainty. An unchecked arms race creates a constant risk of miscalculation, a background hum of instability that can spike energy prices, break supply chains, and send investors running for cover. We live in a globally connected economy. A shock in one part of the world can trigger failures everywhere. We saw how one ship stuck in the Suez Canal or a pandemic could shatter global trade. The threat of a great power conflict, even a limited one, introduces a whole new level of risk. And that risk is already forcing a rerouting of global wealth, driven by the hidden fronts of this new Cold War. The end of the New START treaty is the starting pistol for an arms race you can see: missiles in silos, bombers on runways, and subs under the sea. But this visible race is being fueled by a much deeper, quieter conflict. A war fought not for land, but for the very foundations of modern power. This is the war most people don't see. It's a war for economic survival, and it has two main fronts: silicon and energy. Think about the 20th century. The global economy ran on oil. The countries that controlled the flow of oil had immense geopolitical power. The 21st century runs on two things: oil and microchips. Semiconductors are the new oil. These tiny slivers of silicon are the bedrock of the modern world. They aren't just in your phone and your computer. They're in your car, your fridge, and your TV. More importantly, they're in the data centers that run the global internet and the AI models that are reshaping our world. They are in the guidance systems of the very missiles this new arms race is producing. As one former US national security advisor put it bluntly, China's lack of access to the most advanced semiconductors is the central bottleneck stopping it from overtaking the United States. If you control the choke points of the semiconductor supply chain, you can cripple an adversary's economy and military without firing a shot. At the same time, the old war over energy hasn't gone away, it has just gotten more intense and has merged with this new tech conflict. Energy security is national security. The ability to power your cities, run your factories, and fuel your military is everything. In this new era of competition, energy flows are being redrawn along geopolitical lines. Old alliances are fraying and new energy partnerships are forming, creating new dependencies and new weak spots. Nations are weaponizing their control over natural resources, using them as a tool to get what they want. This two-front war, the Silicon War and the Energy War, is the hidden engine of the new Cold War. The moves on these fronts explain why the great powers are willing to let the old arms control system die. They're playing a much bigger game. The ultimate prize isn't just more warheads, it's dominating the technological and economic landscape for the next 50 years. It's about building a tough, self-sufficient economic bloc that can survive the shocks of a more chaotic and competitive world. And the two most critical flashpoints in this global struggle, the places where the military and economic battlefields merge, are two small islands that have the entire global economy in their hands: Ukraine and Taiwan. They aren't just potential war zones, they are the ultimate economic choke points. To understand the 21st century, you need to understand one company, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. You really can't overstate its importance. As of 2026, TSMC makes over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips. These are the chips under 7 nanometers, the bleeding-edge processors that power everything from Apple's iPhones and Nvidia's AI GPUs to the supercomputers essential for military and scientific research. The entire global tech industry, from Silicon Valley to Shenzhen, depends completely on this one company on this one small island. This has led to the idea of Taiwan's Silicon Shield. The theory is that a war over Taiwan would be so devastating to the global economy, stopping the production of almost all advanced electronics, that the cost would be too high for anyone, including China. But a shield can also be a target. And that extreme concentration of manufacturing has become the main battlefield in the Silicon War between the US and China. The United States sees this dependence as a massive vulnerability. For years, American policy was all about globalized efficiency. It was cheaper to have companies like Apple design chips in California and let specialists like TSMC build them in Taiwan. The CHIPS and Science Act, which set aside over $50 billion to boost American semiconductor production, is a complete reversal of that thinking. It's a clear admission that in a world of great power competition, security and resilience are more important than efficiency. The goal is to onshore or friendshore the manufacturing of critical chips, cutting our reliance on a supply chain that runs straight through a geopolitical flashpoint. For China, Taiwan's semiconductor industry is both a prize and a threat. Beijing's Made in China 2025 plan was a grand strategy to become self-sufficient in key technologies, with semiconductors at the very top of the list. China has poured huge amounts of money, estimated at over $150 billion, into building its own chip industry. Still, it remains years, maybe decades, behind the cutting edge. Its top local manufacturer, SMIC, is making progress, but it can't match the scale or quality of TSMC. The US has worked systematically to keep it that way. Starting around 2018, Washington began rolling out tough export controls, targeting Chinese tech giants like Huawei and cutting off their access to American chip design software and manufacturing equipment. The Dutch company ASML, the world's only maker of the extreme ultraviolet, EUV, lithography machines needed for the most advanced chips, has also been pressured to stop sales to China. The result is a technological blockade. The US and its allies are trying to control the choke points of the semiconductor world to slow down China's technological and military growth. This has created a strange and sometimes contradictory policy. In early 2026, the Trump administration has taken a complex approach, sometimes allowing sales of certain AI chips to China, but with a heavy 25% surcharge, trying to balance corporate profits with national security. At the same time, Congress has pushed back with bipartisan bills aiming to give lawmakers the power to block those sales, treating advanced chips like weapons. This struggle is forcing a total restructure of the global tech industry. The era of a single, efficient, global supply chain is over. We are moving toward a split world, with two competing technology stacks, one led by America, the other by China. TSMC itself is being forced to hedge its bets, building new factories, or fabs, in Arizona and Japan, a strategic decentralization driven by political pressure. These moves are an acknowledgement of the new reality, where your chips are made is now a matter of national security. This split comes with huge costs. Having two separate supply chains is naturally less efficient, which could mean higher prices for everything from phones to cars. Innovation might also slow down as collaboration is replaced by competition and secrecy. But for the great powers, these costs are worth it. The price of falling behind in the race for tech supremacy is seen as infinitely higher. The Silicon Shield, then, is a double-edged sword for Taiwan. Its dominance makes it essential, but it also makes it the focal point of the most intense geopolitical rivalry of our time. Every chip that comes out of a TSMC fab is a testament to Taiwan's skill, but it's also another reminder of the world's critical dependence, and another reason the great powers are maneuvering for control. While the fight for semiconductors plays out in high-tech labs and factories, an older, more primal struggle is reshaping the world map, the war for energy. For decades, the global energy market was built on a fragile stability, backed by American military power ensuring oil could flow freely through choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, where nearly 20% of the world's oil passes. That system allowed for a deeply connected global economy where energy could be bought and sold on a relatively open market. That era is ending. Just like with semiconductors, the logic of efficiency is being replaced by the logic of geopolitical security. Countries aren't just looking for the cheapest barrel of oil anymore, they're looking for the most reliable and politically friendly sources. This is causing a great realignment, splitting the world into distinct energy blocks. The most dramatic shift has been Russia's pivot to the east. Before 2022, over 40% of Russian gas went to the European Union. The war in Ukraine and the Western sanctions that followed shattered that relationship, forcing Moscow to completely reorient its energy strategy almost overnight. The main beneficiary has been China. The energy alliance between Russia and China has deepened into a structural one. By late 2025, Russia had become China's single largest supplier of energy, making up nearly 20% of its total energy imports. This isn't just about oil tankers. It's about massive, Long-term infrastructure. The Power of Siberia 1 pipeline is already pumping gas to China, and the new Power of Siberia 2 pipeline will cement this energy axis for a generation, eventually allowing Russia to send as much gas east as it once planned to send to Europe through the now defunct Nord Stream 2 pipeline. This works out beautiful for both countries. Moscow gets a vital economic lifeline and a customer for the gas Europe no longer buys. Beijing gets a secure, overland supply of energy from a strategic partner, reducing its dependence on sea routes that could be blocked by the US Navy in a conflict. For Beijing, this is a matter of survival. China is the world's biggest oil and gas importer, and its leaders have long seen this reliance on sea lanes as a critical weakness. But this partnership isn't symmetrical. For Moscow, Beijing is now an essential, almost irreplaceable customer. For Beijing, Moscow is an important partner, but just one of many. This gives China huge leverage, allowing it to negotiate better prices and use its position as a key buyer to advance its own goals. Ukraine, in this context, is more than a battlefield, it's an economic choke point. It sits at the crossroads of vital grain and energy routes. Control over Ukraine's Black Sea ports means influence over a huge chunk of the world's food supply. Its pipelines were, for decades, critical to Europe's energy security. Russia's invasion wasn't just about territory, it was about disrupting these flows and showing how fragile the existing European economic order really was. The United States, for its part, has been a major beneficiary of this realignment. The American shale revolution has turned the US into a dominant energy exporter, allowing it to supply Europe with the liquefied natural gas, LNG, it needs to replace Russian supplies. This has strengthened its transatlantic alliances and brought in significant revenue. The new global energy map is becoming clear. One bloc is forming around Russia and China, linked by pipelines and a shared opposition to the US-led order. Another bloc consists of the United States and its allies in Europe and Asia, connected by LNG tankers and security agreements. And in the middle are the big energy producers of the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, who are trying to play both sides, balancing their traditional security ties with the US against the new reality of China as their most important customer. This energy war is a quiet but relentless fight for leverage. It's about making sure your own economy can run while gaining the ability to disrupt your rivals. Like the unconstrained nuclear arms race and the fight for semiconductor supremacy, the weaponization of energy is another sign that the old, interconnected global order is breaking apart. We've crossed a threshold into a new and dangerous era. The expiration of the final nuclear arms treaty has unleashed the ghost of an unconstrained, three-way arms race, throwing the world into a state of strategic uncertainty we haven't seen in over 50 years. But this isn't just a repeat of the 20th century. This new Cold War is fundamentally different. It's a conflict being fought on hidden fronts, in the invisible systems that power our daily lives. It's a silicon war for control over the microscopic chips that are the brains of our modern world, a struggle that has turned a single company in Taiwan into the planet's geopolitical center of gravity. It's an energy war that is redrawing the global map, splitting the world into competing blocks and turning the flow of oil and gas into a weapon. The old playbook of globalization, based on the promise of endless efficiency and connection, is being tossed out. It's being replaced by a new, harsher logic of national security, resilience, and block-based competition. The world is splitting in two, with rival economic and technological ecosystems. This is a more unstable, more unpredictable, and likely more expensive world for all of us. Most people don't see these connections. They see inflation, supply chain problems, or political tensions as separate issues. But they are all symptoms of this deeper, structural conflict. The race for AI supremacy, the push to bring manufacturing back home, the shifting energy alliances, they are all moves in a global game for economic and technological dominance. The decisions being made today, in Washington, Moscow, and Beijing, are setting the course for the rest of the 21st century. They are building a world with fewer rules and higher stakes. This is the new Cold War. And it has already started. If this analysis helped you understand the forces shaping our world, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It helps us continue to produce in-depth reports like this one. And be sure to check out our other video on the AI race, which explores another critical front in this new global competition. Thank you for watching.